So you're like a child that's wandered in the movie theater halfway through and you're wondering what's going on. This is Donny Cast on the 8th of July 2022. I am your host Walter on the Good Line Greater Good, and let's just get into it. So the big news of yesterday, I guess today, is the assassination of the former prime minister of Japan. And to kind of start this off, we're going to be discussing the assassination of a former, he was the chairman of the Japan Socialist Party. He was assassinated in 1960. There's this picture here of the dude who did it. Like I said, I don't want to particularly say names, not that I could with these Japanese names. Anyway, the Wikipedia page, Wikipedia is trash, but it's easy and I'm lazy. So on the 12th of October, 1960, the commie dude was stabbed in the stomach with a Japanese short sword. It says it's a Wackensawi, whatever. Um, the big thing is the assassination weakened the Japan Socialist Party, inspired a series of copycat crimes against other socialists, and made Yamaguchi an enduring hero and subsequently a martyr to the Japanese far right after he committed suicide while in custody. Yeah, I'm not an expert on Japan, but I do kind of grasp that it's mostly a mono-ethnic state with a monoculture. And you can kind of see why it has endured to have this mono-ethnic culture, or mono-ethnic and monoculture. Well, repeating myself. Going on when you have some 17-year-old young man that would go up there and stab a commie in the stomach, and then he kind of becomes revered as a hero. So moving on from that, we have ex-Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe assassinated and dies at 67 after campaign shooting. Again, I don't like saying the name nor the pictures of the individuals that do this shit. Is a 41-year-old man who was allegedly a veteran of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. He used a homemade shotgun, and dude said that it's not related to Abe's individual politics. He just didn't like the guy. Okay. Um, uh, Abe's, this was in the article. Abe's ultra nationalist riled the Koreans and China, and his push to normalize Japan's defense posture angered many Japanese. Abe failed to achieve his cherished goal of formally rewriting the U.S. drafted pacifist constitution due to public opposition. So basically, that Japan cannot be self-sufficient because they can't actually have a military. And they kind of gather why after World War II. So that's why they have a defense force instead of a military that can be used for offensive purposes. So moving on from that, we have this, and ignore the Elon Musk is terminating his $44 billion deal by Twitter. I'll get into that at the end. That just literally popped up as I was getting ready to go live. So this Yahoo article says Japan's Shinzo Abe assassination, China sends its condolences. I'm fucking sure that they did. I'm sure that they probably allegedly had something to do with the assassination in the first place. So this article says that Abe was famous domestically and abroad for his strong nationalist policies and stated vision for a more powerful, self-sufficient Japan. He repeatedly refused policies suggested by international bodies such as migration and refugee quotas, saying that his country first needed to fix its own problems. I like this guy. I like this guy a lot. Abe's Japan First policies rustled feathers across East Asia, where Japan has maintained less than affectionate relationships with China and South Korea since the end of World War II. Regardless of the truth of what happened behind this, how much China influence may or may not have been involved with the actual assassination. Again, I think it's very likely that the assassination will cause a populist spirit to continue to push the nationalists forward into self-sufficiency and anti-China rhetoric in Japan, some of this is probably not necessarily a bad thing, that Japan should look out for its own best interest. And if you had a stronger Japan in the first place, if they had a larger military, it wasn't heavily reliant on the United States, they would be able to deal with the region's problems with China instead of having to have USA World Police come across and do it themselves. So China would probably be much less brazen with what it's doing in regards to naval activities, to say the least, in the area. China and Japan do have particular disputes over certain islands that are going on. And as we transition again, speaking of China, good old creepy Uncle Joe, the president of the United States, well, it turns out that he's been opening up the United States strategic petroleum reserves, and some of that oil got sent to China, which is already bad enough considering that we kind of have a problem with our gasoline prices in the country. But as it's further being reported that 1 million of those barrels that were sold to China, well, yeah, they have ties to creepy Uncle Joe's creepy Uncle Son, Hunter. And so in this BizPack article, it says President Joe Biden reportedly sold 5 million barrels of oil. We talked about this yesterday, of our oil reserves overseas, while America suffers at the pumps, and 950,000 barrels of that evidently went to communist Chinese state-owned oil and gas company that has ties to Hunter Biden. The private equity firm that was co-founded by Hunter Biden, the White House has repeatedly asserted that he is no longer involved with this equity firm. At the end of the day, this is me. This could just be bad optics spun by the political opposition, i.e., the conservatives, and realize that whenever anybody says but, it means everything before is just bullshit, because we're getting to what we really want to talk about. The chances that Biden's son, Hunter, is the most qualified dude on the planet to negotiate business dealings in both Ukraine and China involving oil is very unlikely coinky dink. These private equity firms, they're picking crackhead Hunter on purpose because he's a phone call away from getting, at the time, the vice president of the United States or a sitting senator or now the president of the United States on the phone. It's a very good investment when you can go, hey, Hunter, would you like to have some crack cocaine and some hookers as we go golfing? And you know who would be a good person to bring along for this golfing crack cocaine underage prostitute trip? Well, it would be your dad, the president of the United States. So when I need oil, I can just go, give me fucking oil. Yeah, it's a coinky dink. It is just a coinky dink. So moving on from more coinky dinks. So the U.S. is sending $400 million more in military aid to Ukraine. So this doesn't even matter. $400 million when we've already tossed like 50 something billion at them. Who cares? I've seen stories going around the internet. I'm not even going to go look for them. They're mostly like Twitter posts and other things like your open source journalism that's going on, that the military equipment that's going to Ukraine ain't getting to Ukraine. It's disappeared into the ether because there are soldiers on the ground that are getting their fucking asses kicked by the Russians that are saying they ain't getting the weapons. And if they do get the weapons, they're just like, what the fuck are we supposed to do with this stuff? We have no idea how to use it. The problem again with the Ukraine debacle is that there's so much propaganda and counter propaganda on. I literally don't know what to think about what's going on in Ukraine. And I highly doubt that our amazing politicians that are having their son negotiate deals that will eventually come back to bite them in the ass, at least from an optic standpoint, or have any fucking clue what's going on in Ukraine. As we talked about yesterday, the boots on the ground intel that's coming up from anybody that's not ideologically compromised to the powers that be, people that are sitting on, sitting in Senate and House seats or in the White House, they want the reports to reflect their worldview. And in this case, Ukraine are the good guys. They can do no wrong, and the money will go to where it's supposed to go to. Bridge in San Francisco. So, again, what we do know, and then it further says in here, the latest aid package is the 15th package of military weapons and equipment transferred to Ukraine from the Defense Department stock since last August. What we do know is Ukraine is losing. It's just a matter of how you want to spin that. How well the Russians are doing, don't know. How bad the Russians are doing, don't know. But Ukraine is losing, and that's the end of the discussion. Russia is very unlikely to give back the regions that they've already taken. Ukraine is losing, and we're throwing more and more military equipment that we have no idea where it's going. They have no idea where it's going, and it's just disappearing into a big gigantic void as Ukraine asks for $750 billion worth of aid to rebuild their country once this is all over with, that we talked about yesterday. So moving on to how bad the Biden administration can run policy, we have Biden under growing pressure signs executive order on abortion. This is the LA Times. They are absolute fucking trash. Anyway, on this one, it's all bullshit. Biden signing an executive order on abortion is it's literally bullshit. It does very little. The Hyde Amendment does not allow for federal funding to go to abortions. This is just a big campaign ad against the 2022 midterms, because again, it's as much as the Republicans are trying to fuck this up, it still looks like the Democrats are going to get massacred in the 2022 midterms. Again, Biden is using this for a campaign ad. The quotes that were from the article from Biden himself, he says, "We need 2 additional pro-choice senators and a pro-choice House to codify Roe as federal law." Yeah, you've had fucking 40 years, 50 years to do this, you piece of shit. Your vote can make that a reality. Again, this is just a campaign ad. Women are not without electoral or political power. No shit. You can determine the outcome of this issue. Funnily enough, the Alito and the Dobbs case, the Dobbs case was the one that just struck down Roe versus Wade. Alito wrote the majority of opinion, and I read it, and he literally talked about that women can decide the issue state by state, because, as he wrote, women make up the greatest portion of the greatest portion of our population. They tend to vote more than men, and their position shows that they are generally anti-abortion relative to men. So yeah, they could go out and they can fucking decide. Creepy Uncle Joe. That's what Alito wrote in the majority of opinion, that we should kick it back to the states, and the culture of each individual states, the women in those states should make up their own fucking minds. You fucking piece of shit. To go further on of how incompetent the Biden administration is, how corrupt they are. So the probe finds U.S. border agents use unnecessary force against migrants. This is actually a little bit interesting after all this back and forth that's going on. I didn't know some of the stuff. So it says the U.S. Border Patrol agents on horseback use unnecessary force and violated agency policy. As a result of the investigation, 4 Border Patrol agents have been notified they face disciplinary measures. This is probably not good. The Border Patrol investigators did not find evidence that mounted agents struck anyone with the reins, because that's all that really mattered in the moment, was that they had these still pictures that looked like you had Border Patrol agents whipping illegal migrants coming across the Rio Grande. That's all they really cared about. The actual investigation doesn't mean as much because they have the photos, they've already used it, but it would look really bad optically if they don't, have some scapegoat to hang against the wall and say that they got someone, when they turn around, they have to say like, no, everything was, working as intended. As this is continuing the article, as a result of a lack of command, control, and communication, that's not good. That means that the whole structure is broken. Horse Patrol Unit personnel carried out an operation at the request of Texas Department of Public Safety, which directly contravened U.S. Border Patrol operational objectives and resulted in unnecessary use of force against migrants who were attempting to re-enter the United States with food. And I was like, what? So, from what I could gather, these migrants, and I believe they were Somalis, were allowed, they came in the United States, and they were in the United States, and they were processed, but they were allowed to go back into Mexico to get the food because they didn't have food in the United States, and then come back in, and then they weren't supposed to get hassled after they've already illegally entered the United States and then gone back over into Mexico to come back in the United States with food because they didn't have this stuff in the United States. Can't make this shit up. So then the Texas Department of Public Safety, who were conducting the operations that we talked about yesterday, trying to secure the border. They said, "Hey, border patrol guys on horses, can you come help us out?" And then because of the lack of command and control, the interaction between the border patrol, who were supposed to be lending their resources to help, Texas Department of Public Safety, they didn't know how to use these horse units, and because the horse unit was largely left to their own devices, the Biden administration was like, "Hey, we don't like the fact that we're getting caught with our pants down, that we're fucking incompetent. Therefore, Texas is doing something about it." And then they're using our resources to show how incompetent they are. But having now read this article and kind of been following what's going on with the internal report, they actually, like, some of the officers, the border patrol agents, may have been acting unprofessional, said some naughty stuff, and there may have legitimately been misconduct that was going on. But, and as we know, everything that we say before "but" doesn't matter. That's going to be overshadowed by both the incompetence of the Biden administration and ICE, the Border Patrol, and the gross negligence of the Biden administration to allow a situation to exist in the first place, combined with the political operatives on both sides distorting this for the optics. you know, this is just demoralization. And you're going to have border patrol agents that are demoralized to go to work. You're going to have a country that is demoralized because you just have an active, open southern border, that doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, what really occurred, where we actually could look at our how individuals were functioning, how these institutions were functioning, looking for some type of change, and people get their grubby little fucking mitts all over this problem, and now who fucking knows? Because at the end of the day, it was a really bad policy to essentially have an open door where people can just walk back and forth across your border. It would almost be like, let's say, we had certain people on terrorist watch lists that were coming up across the southern border, and they had left their weapons of mass destruction in Mexico, but had been allowed to come across the border, hang out, and then realize that they had left their weapons of mass destruction across the border, were allowed to high five the Border Patrol agents as they walk back into Mexico to retrieve their weapons of mass destruction, then re high five the Border Patrol agents as they walk back across. Yes, I'm sure that the Border Patrol agents on horseback, quote unquote, used unnecessary force and violated agency policy. There's nothing to see here. So let's talk about more of let's just allow bad things to occur. So in this case, we have Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is forced to escape DC steakhouse with a security detail after pro-choice protesters harassed him during dinner and told the manager to throw him out. There's not too much to the story. This is just ongoing. There's certain elements of this that are just flat out illegal, that if we had a functioning government and law enforcement institutions, they would be doing this job. It actually becomes an issue of intent. Are you trying to intimidate a judge to change his mind, or are you trying to threaten him? If you're doxing officials, is your intent to quote unquote protest or assassination? Because we do know that there was an assassination attempt on good old Kavanaugh like not too long ago. Because at the end of the day, if you're just standing there with a picket sign outside of a restaurant, probably not going to get a lot of press. But if you're going into the restaurant and you're yelling at the owner of the restaurant to kick out the sitting Supreme Court justice, you're getting further and further to the point where you're intimidating the judge. You're threatening him, even if you're not actually threatening him, because you're saying that your decision is not the decision that I like, and I'm going to continue to harass and intimidate you until you change your mind. There may be something illegal about that. But the other thing is, how are they getting the information to find these officials to actually do these things? And that becomes a bigger issue, because if you are just the person that works at a restaurant and you're sending out into the ether, hey, look, I got the Supreme Court justice here, someone should show up. Eventually they're going to show up with a shotgun that was homemade, and they're going to shoot your former prime minister in the back of the head with a homemade shotgun. Again, proving that the Second Amendment doesn't matter, because people can just go out and they will find a way to make their homemade weapons to go do these things. So if now all you're doing in this country is pointing those type of people to the location of people of Supreme Court justices, eventually going to be an outcome. And if that's the outcome you want, then yes, it's illegal. And again, this is an issue of culture and the agreements that we tacitly have with each other in order to live with each other in a society. If I can't go to dinner with my family because someone is going to be there to protest, harass, intimidate, threaten, dox, or possibly attempt to assassinate, we don't have a functioning culture any longer. We're just in anarchy, and not only are we in anarchy, we're in this weird pseudo anarchy where the fascist powers in charge are arbitrarily deciding if and when to be enforcing laws. And we'll get to that in a second when we talk about more of our cultural demoralization that's going on. So normally, like I said, I don't pull this stuff up. I don't read a lot about this. There's not a lot of story to it, but I had to go back and find it in conjunction with other things that I'm going to talk about today. So we have a Chicago pastor went on Fox News and was calling out the lack of coverage of the city's violence epidemic. We have become desensitized. No. See, here's my problem with this. It's a Chicago pastor by the name of TJ Grooms emphasizes the need for action to combat rising crime rates, calling out politicians for failing to curb the surge of violence as the city is on pace for more than 600 murders in 2022. Grooms says he no longer expects any help from politicians. Fuck you. Because as I'm about to state, I'm no fan of Republicans. And the city of Chicago hasn't seen a different voice in about 100 years. Fox News and other conservative outlets have been politicizing the violence in Chicago, at least from the position to say, don't let this shit happen where you live. And they've been doing it for about at least a decade. I know that for a fact because I've been perusing, outlets like Fox News. This is, like I said, it just is at least a counter narrative to the left. Nobody cares about Chicago because Chicago doesn't give a fuck about Chicago, Mr. TJ Grooms. I don't know what he wants from anybody. Like it is he's lived in such an echo chamber in Chicago to believe that no one cares about Chicago. Politicians don't care about Chicago because he's failed to go outside and go to, say, a Fox News and see that the numbers that they've been putting up for, like I said, like a decade at this point. Like I don't have a lot of sympathy for you at this point. Like Chicago pastor TJ Grooms, I don't know what to tell you. Like it has been an issue. And I'm sure that there are people that would like to solve the problem in your city. They are not being voted into power, and I don't know who to point at other than the people in Chicago. That's the bottom line. So if you don't have a lot of faith and you no longer expect help from politicians, whose fucking fault is that? Because as I pointed out, Fox has been sensationalizing the violence in Chicago for 10 years, even back to the Obama administration, to say, don't let this shit happen where you live. People care. They may not care the way that you like, and it just causes more demoralization. Segue to so there's a case. I saw the video of this. A Jose Alba he works at a bodega. I'll just read the quote from this article on again Fox News. Jose Alba, a 51-year-old with no prior criminal history, is unable to post the $250,000 bail stemming from the July 1st incident involving Austin Simon, 34, inside a Manhattan deli, according to the New York Post. The hefty figure is just half of what Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office wanted. The confrontation that resulted in the death of Simon, who was out on parole at the time after being imprisoned for assaulting a police officer, following an argument Alba had with his girlfriend over a bag of chips, the newspaper added. So I saw the video. Basically, the dude who got killed, Austin Simon, he was outside, and Alba, who was the clerk, was ringing up the total of Simon's girlfriend. She didn't have the money. He reached over the counter, grabbed the stuff from the hand, I think, of Austin Simon's girlfriend's kid. Then she goes outside, grabs Simon. Simon comes back in, and this is where the video picks up, where Simon hops the counter, and then Alba stabs him. Okay, like, you get the society that you deserve, and not only that, like, I don't know how else you would expect someone to handle this shit. So anyway, to further, this is from Breitbart. Bragg, Alvin Bragg, the DA of Manhattan, was elected in November 2021 with indirect backing from left-wing billionaire George Soros, who gave $1 million to Color of Change PAC, which spent to elect Bragg. So this is an ongoing issue of the destabilization that's going on within the country, because now you have non-governmental organizations will just say Soros is technically a U.S. naturalized U.S. citizen, but whatever policies that he has in place internationally, it is a larger bond-like organization that he's just using his wealth to foment change, i.e., destabilize. And again, I have to point out, like, if you voted for this shit, you deserve it. If you want change, what's the point of voting? And that's a big issue. Going back to Pastor TJ Groom's, like, if there are people that want change, there's no real point on showing up to the polls, because it's such an upward climb to get a different voice, to get a different direction, to have people that actually care. So moving on a little bit from that, we go to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin outlaws ballot drop boxes, and there's a little bit more to this. Where it says the commission had approved the use of drop boxes in response to the pandemic, when many voters were anxious to limit the in-person interactions. Fuck you. You don't know that. What does many voters mean? I mean, this is, again, Rutgers is just trash. You don't know what many voters means. You don't have to prove what many voters are. You can take a subjective opinion that some voters were anxious about in-person interaction during the pandemic. This may be true, but modifiers like many does not mean that all, or it was legal, or it was democratic, or anything like that. You're creating a subjective point, which is very difficult for anyone to counter. You're inserting it into your article as a excuse for why the commission ultimately did something that the Supreme Court found as in fucking valid. So to continue, the November 2020 election included 528 boxes statewide, according to election officials. But Justice Rebecca Bradley, writing for the majority, said that under the state law, ballots must be returned to a clerk's office or other designated site, not to an inanimate object such as an unstaffed box. Only the legislature may permit absentee voting via ballot box drop boxes. So now you have your deep state deciding to do something without authorization from the legislature. And this actually goes back to another Supreme Court that just got dropped about limiting the power of the EPA to act outside what is constitutionally allowed, or excuse me, what is legislatively allowed by Congress. And that's going to have more creeping problems for other federal agencies like the FDA or the ATF. In this case, if it is not expressly allowed by either the state constitution of Wisconsin or the legislature of Wisconsin, an independent body that was not elected cannot just go make up shit on their own and go fucking do it. Because that would be very scary, where you have, like, I don't know, a DA in Manhattan who's just making shit up and willy-nilly deciding when he does or does not want to apply the law. Almost like, right? So to continue, we have in the dissent, Ann Walsh Bradley joined the court's two other liberals. Surprise, fucking surprise. Commies said that the decision erected a new barrier to voting with little justification, although, quote unquote, although it pays lip service to the importance of the right to vote, the majority lead opinion has the practical effect of making it more difficult to exercise it. Yes. The dissent also argued the decision to bar other people from returning ballots to clerks' offices would primarily hurt homebound residents, including disabled and sick people. Fuck you. If voting isn't, so this is me now, this is my notes. If voting is important at all for somebody, they will find a way. This is just how people should function, because it's important to them. If you remove all obstacles to voting, even the obstacle of being informed of who to vote or how to vote, it has no value at all. even to the point that the decision that you make has no value and someone else can make up your mind for you. TJ Groom, you dumb fuck. I can understand the good idea, Fairy. Even though we are not a democracy in this country, it isn't even about votes. It's about ballots. It's about black ink on paper. That's how little the vote matters in this country. So when you have a sitting justice on the Supreme Court of Wisconsin come out and write something as fucking retarded as the practical effect of making it difficult to exercise the right to vote. At what point have you removed so many obstacles for voting? The practical effect of making it more difficult that at that point voting has no value. Someone can literally sit on their toilet as they wipe their ass and click a device on their phone and send a vote to get counted. And it doesn't even matter what that vote is. It's just the fact that you have a number and that number can turn out whatever way that they want because you have no intermediary to decide if that vote even was legally cast. And then to be a Supreme Court justice and said, well, it pays lip service to the importance of the right to vote. Yeah, it should be so important that you are willing to, in some way, shape, or form, inconvenience your fucking self to go cast that vote. And more importantly, the vote should have enough value to you that you not only inconvenience yourself to fucking cast your vote, you inconvenience yourself to inform yourself of who and what to fucking vote for, so you don't have DAs in Manhattan that are charging people for self-defense or for murder in a self-defense case, and you don't have a city of Chicago that's just fucking the worst place in the entire world when it comes to crime, even worse than, I don't know, a war zone like Ukraine, because I can remember a few years back, the only place worse than Chicago was like I shit you not, Afghanistan and fucking Mexico. So yes, that's going on, and then you have a sitting Supreme Court justice is like, we just need to make it easier for people that are disabled and sick. You know what happens with disabled and sick people? If it matters to them, they'll figure it out. And you know what else? If it matters to society, they will figure out a way to put those disabled and sick people on their backs and get them to a fucking polling station. Or at the very least, most of these states already had rather robust ways of individuals being able to go, I wouldn't even say ask for permission, but just basically go into the states, just like getting a concealed weapons permit and saying, hey, I have an issue. Can I execute my constitutional right to vote by having a mail-in ballot? Not too difficult. And now they're just like, yeah, if we just have these unmanned drop boxes in the middle of nowhere, fuck it, who cares? Who cares how it gets there? Who cares what's in the vote, as long as it gets to someplace? And again, like Stalin says, it's not about who casts the votes, it's about who counts them. Fuck you. Fuck you. Demoralization does not matter. So let's see. Moving on to our daily, if you live in California, you should be moving. We have San Jose franchisees say state bill will put them out of business. It's Assembly Bill 257, co-authored by local Assemblyman Evan Lowe. I haven't looked at that guy. I probably should. Envisions a state-appointed council to create standards for fast food industry, ranging from working conditions to wages. It would also make corporations jointly liable with their franchisees to comply with the law. This is the literal definition of fascism. You can have your private property you can have your private business as long as you do what you're told to by the state. More demoralization. Why would you, as a normie, want to open a business in California? Why would you, as a normie in Chicago, want to cast a vote? So now we're into Elon Musk, and so this is the story I was kind of prepping before I was about to go live, and it just says Twitter is laying off a third of its talent acquisition team. I'm probably going to end up doing a larger story on this Twitter stuff tomorrow once I can read about what's going on. So I found this interesting that like Twitter laid off 30% of their HR slash their talent acquisition team, and so there wasn't a lot to this article. It says several media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, on Thursday reported that Twitter would lay off around 30% of its talent acquisition team, fewer than 100 people. A Twitter spokesman confirmed the layoffs to CNN, saying the reduction was made to account for revised business needs. The interesting thing about this, when I saw this earlier, was anything Twitter does right now, they are aware will influence their stock price. And I wrote this before this broke, their deal with Elon Musk. And then as I literally was about to click go live, I pulled up one of my lead stories and I saw the red banner and I clicked on it and bam. Elon says he's terminated the Twitter deal aboard to fight because he's technically has signed a deal confirming that he is going to buy it. Supposedly, this is going to cost trigger like a $1 billion payout by Musk to Twitter. We'll have to see. Uh, it's interesting, and then this is all new to me. This story, this link that I had posted at the bottom, didn't even have any follow-up. When I clicked on it, it was like 2 lines long. I'll have to read about what's going on with it. I'll probably do a story on it tomorrow. It's a little late to go reading this, but at the end of the day, all I wrote is if Elon Musk kills his Twitter deal, well, I should back that up. Elon Musk killing the Twitter deal is a polite way of Elon Musk saying, I do not trust how you're running your business because I cannot get the transparency to find out about how many of your accounts are fraudulent. And this effectively kills Twitter just by him doing this, because it's the equivalent of starting a rumor that the bank doesn't have enough money to fulfill its debts and its obligation to its customers. This is what Elon Musk has done. So the reality of it is there's no way back from this for Twitter except to sell to Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk won't buy the company because he thinks it's hot garbage, it sends a pretty good indicator to everybody that there's something going on with Twitter, because he's backing out of this deal when he's offering 30% more than the current stock price on Wall Street. Twitter's trash. They've been manipulating the view of the normie, or attempting to manipulate the view of the normie via the social media machine that they have. And this is Elon Musk saying the emperor has no clothes. So anyway, it's Friday. I'll probably have to do something tomorrow because the content gods need something. And, demoralization. Don't stab a communist in the stomach with a Japanese ceremonial sword.